Hi, I'm Rachelle Craig of Rachelle Handmade, and welcome to Beginner Quilting. Over the next 6 lessons, I will be guiding you step by step through the process of making this lovely 20-inch table topper you see behind me. We will work through gathering your quilting supplies and cutting, piecing, quilting, and binding your quilty creation. In this first lesson, I'll be showing you all the basic supplies you'll need, comparing yardage versus precuts, and working through some fundamental quilting terms. In your welcome email, you received this Rachelle Handmade cheat sheet of quilting terms. It covers the basic terms we will need to complete our piece. It isn't an exhaustive list by any means, so feel free to add terms to this list as you expand your knowledge of quilting. Let's begin by taking a look at the basic supplies you'll need to get started. Here's the basic supplies you'll need to get started on your first quilt. This is a rotary cutting mat. The size is 12 by 24, and this is the one I started out on way back when. This is probably the smallest size that I would recommend you get. It fits your 6 by 24 inch ruler very well and allows you to cut a full width strip of yardage or fat quarter at one time. Eventually you can decide to upgrade. They have different size mats, a larger one. This one right here is a 24 by 36 mat that I treated myself to a couple years ago, and I completely love it. You'll also need a 45 millimeter rotary cutting. You'll also need a 45 millimeter rotary cutter. This one is a Olfa cutter, which I love their products, and it has a blade cover for safety purposes. You'll need replacement blades. They come in a little package like this, and you can get them at pretty much any big box store. You'll also need a heat soluble or water soluble marking pen. This one is heat soluble, and it is removed by the heat of your iron or by the heat of your dryer after you wash and dry your quilt. This one is a water erasable pen, removed by the steam from your iron and or the water in your washing machine. You'll also need a pin cushion and pins. They come in many different sizes. These are plastic headed pins. They also have glass headed pins. This one is a magnetic base pin cushion, and all the pins stick to it. And this is just a standard tomato pin cushion. I have collected many pins over the years, so you can also use this kind. You'll also need a pair of small scissors like this and a seam ripper. Get familiar with this item. You will likely use it very frequently in the first few months of your quilting adventure. You also need thread. We will go through choosing thread colors to suit your quilt and quilting down the road, but I would first off grab a few neutral spools, a gray, a cream, white, and or black, a tan color. This is a Coats & Clark brand, mercerized cotton. We'll go through the pros and cons of the cotton versus polyester thread down the road, but for now, just pick up whatever suits your fancy. You'll also need sewing machine needles for replacement, and quilting needles. Quilting needles are called betweens, or you can use this kind, which are called sharps. I prefer to use these, but it's totally up to you, and you'll get a feel of what you like to use after you quilt for a while. And to accompany that, you'll need a needle threader. They normally come in a package of 3, and they're very inexpensive, but they come in very, very handy. And you'll also need quilter's pins, which are pins that have a curve in them. So when you are pinning your quilt sandwich, it's a little bit easier to get the end of the pin up and back through the fabric and to latch it there. So we'll go through using those later. You'll also need, not pictured here, is a basic sewing machine. You'll need an ironing board, and you'll need an iron. I have a small iron, a mini iron. It comes in really handy for traveling. This is an Aliso brand, and I absolutely love this iron. Highly recommended. And I also have a large iron. It's got steam capacity and really good iron, big iron. Along the way, we'll also work through the pattern and the items you'll need for that. You'll be needing some fat quarters for that, and some backing and batting and binding fabric for that, but we will go through that here after a little bit in this lesson. Now we're going to talk about yardage versus precuts. You've seen in the craft stores a standard bolt of fabric, which comes on a cardboard bolt like this, and it has a folded edge and a selvage edge, which is a raw edge made by the manufacturer during the manufacturing process. And it comes from anywhere between 42 and 45-inch widths as your standard quilting cotton. But you can also get some fun precuts, they're called, in various sizes. You can get this is a fat eighth, which is a 9 by 22 inch piece of fabric. You can also get a fat quarter, which is a 18 by 22 inch wide piece of pre-cut fabric. It's made by taking a half yard of fabric and cutting it in half. It provides for a different set of shapes that you can get. This is a quarter yard of fabric, which is 9 by the full width of fabric, so 9 by 44. But the fat quarter is simply just a different shape of a quarter yard of fabric. So if you take this and the second side, it's the same amount of fabric, but it's just in a different shape. So you can get a lot of different sizes from this piece of fabric than you can get from a standard quarter yard. Fat quarters can be purchased in single pieces like these. They also come in different size bundles. This is a pink and white bundle folded in one size, and this is a color coordinated bundle of solids that are folded in a different size. They come in a plethora of amounts. This one is, I believe, a 6-pack, and this one is 2, 4, 6, 8, 12 pack. You can get these either online or in the big box stores. This one is a charm square pack, and they normally come in 40 to 42 piece bundles. Also, layer cakes are 10-inch versions of these squares that also come in a variegated or curated bundle of sorts. And another common pre-cut you can buy is these are 2.5-inch by 44-inch strips. They come in a flat pack like this, or you can also buy them in what's called a jelly roll. So they come in, it's normally, all of these items are normally a single line of fabric or a single package curated by the manufacturer. So you can see how you have different options available to you. You can buy by the yard, jelly rolls, layer cakes or charm packs, fat quarters and curated bundles, or you can buy single fat quarters. For the last part of lesson 1, we're going to be walking through some quilting terms visually. We've already gone through the pre-cut items: charm pack, fat eighth, fat quarter, jelly roll, and layer cake. And we'll be covering a few more of these as we proceed in our lessons. But today I'm going to show you the actual construction of a quilt, also known as a quilt sandwich. A quilt consists of 3 layers, which is the backing, the batting, the inner layer, and the top of the quilt. It is layered together and basted which is one of our terms on our list, together with, I use spray bat. The quilt sandwich is basted together, either using quilter's pins that I showed you earlier or spray based. As a beginner, I highly recommend you start out with using these quilter's pins. They're a lot easier to deal with than spray based. All these layers combine and are quilted together to form your finished quilt. As you can see, this is your finished quilt top that you'll be making. This is the backing layer, and the batting layer you can't see, it's enclosed in between the two layers, the backing and the front. This is the top of the quilt, and on the outside of the piece section there is a border all around the quilt block. And to finish off the quilt, we have this nice border, or binding. To finish off the quilt, we have this binding, which is folded around the edge of the quilt to give us a nice finished edge. If you look closely, you can see the detail quilting that I did using a serpentine stitch on my sewing machine. For now, that concludes the quilting terms that we'll be covering for now. You will be learning a lot more down the road, and I look forward to teaching those to you. So grab a pen and paper and your quilting terms list, and we will see you later for our quilty adventures. Take care. The sandwich is basted together, either using quilter's pins that I showed you earlier or spray based. As a beginner, I highly recommend you start out with using these quilter's pins. They're a lot easier to deal with than spray based. All these layers combine and are quilted together to form your finished quilt. As you can see, this is your finished quilt top that you'll be making. This is the backing layer, and the batting layer you can't see, it's enclosed in between the two layers, the backing and the front. This is the top of the quilt, and on the outside of the piece section there is a border all around the quilt block. To finish off the quilt, we have this binding, which is folded around the edge of the quilt to give us a nice finished edge. If you look closely, you can see the detail quilting that I did using a serpentine stitch on my sewing machine. For now, that concludes the quilting terms that we'll be covering for now. You will be learning a lot more down the road, and I look forward to teaching those to you. Thank you for joining me for Lesson 1 of Beginner Quilting. Next time, we'll be going through how to read a quilt pattern and putting together color palettes. In the meantime, grab your quilting terms list and your beginner supply list, and happy shopping. I'll see you next time. Take care.